nothing absent from your lives that are needed. I am going to go as fast as I can. And yes, I'm wearing a Naruto shirt. Never seen one of the cartoons. But this is going to be a lot of information. Anybody who tunes in here on the replay, you might want to go at 1.25 and 1.5 speed. Hello, everybody who's already here. A lot of information. Dubai crude topped $170. Now that's Dubai crude. Topped $170 Friday. So I finally got that number. I have no idea what they're going to do because other than the manipulation in the United States, the oil prices are skyrocketing. I said yesterday that I've got a friend in Australia, their gas price doubled. Just pointing that out. Iraq has announced a force majeure on all oil fields operated by foreign companies. Emphasis, those are companies that were put in place by Cheney the Chump after the invasion of Iraq. At the close of the Iraqi invasion, which was also illegal. The Iranian parliament, I love sarcasm. The Iranian parliament speaker posted, now you got to follow this, after the United States said that they were going to lift the sanctions on Iranian oil so that other people could get oil, the speaker of the Iranian parliament posted on X, sorry, we're sold out. I love sarcasm. Another spokesman from Iran said, it seems it's time to implement pre-designed plans because the United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine are now incapable of intercepting any incoming ordnance. That was said yesterday. Okay, this I will get back to. History. Sometimes I forget people aren't my age and don't remember things. Okay. The Iraq, it's actually Iran because Iraq was the aggressor. But the Iraq-Iran war led to the death of 1 million Iranians. Okay. It lasted 8 years. It was backed by the Kurds as an armed force. And they were armed by the United States, talking about Iraq, including chemical weapons. Okay. They had the secondary force of the Kurds who were also in opposition, which they sacrificed later. And the Kurds, the opposing Kurds, were killed with chemical weapons. All right. So this is how long this goes back. It goes back to the Iran-Iraq war. That was Rumsfeld under Carter. That's how long ago this 1978, 79. That's how far back this goes. Anyway, Iran has clearly stated its demands. It wants reparations paid, compensation for all damages and all people who were killed, all families of people who have been killed. It wants the United States and all of its military bases out of the Persian Gulf. It wants oil traded in anything that's not a dollar bill. They want to kill the petrodollar, which you can't blame them. That's what has financed our overstay in the Middle East. It's also financed the British Protectorate in Palestine's ability to do what it does. They want a binding, enforced treaty ratified by the United States Congress. That means that if it's ratified by the United States Congress, it cannot be violated, although the Congress hasn't stood up and done anything. And it wants an end to all sanctions on Iran. And it wants an end to all the aggression in Palestine. All right, next. Iran has stated multiple times, we will attack any base or headquarters used to attack Iran. So that's the reason why you're seeing what's being targeted. Okay. Since Thursday, now I've been watching and paying attention. Since Thursday, I have seen 0 obvious interceptions. Even slow drones are getting through and hitting their targets all over the Middle East, including the British Protectorate. The Haifa refinery in the British Protectorate is toast. Now, the Dimona strike is a little bit different thing. All right. Everybody's talking about, oh, they hit a nuclear. No, they didn't. Iran did not hit the nuclear facility in Dimona or over Arad. Okay. What they did is they targeted the personnel and the scientists working there, not the facility proper. Okay. Now, I like humor. I'm a comedian. The IRGC spokesman that everybody sees on TV telling everybody where they're going to hit had a message. I don't know if it's AI or not, but it's funnier than heck. So even if it's AI, I got to share this. If it's AI, it's even better. The spokesman, the all serious guy who says, this is what we're going to hit and this is what we have hit. There's a video of him that says, "You're fired," to Trump. I think you will recognize this statement. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I found that hilarious. I replayed it on loop about 8 times and was just laughing my butt off. Okay. In the British Protectorate in Palestine Conference, Jonathan Greenblatt, if you do not know who this guy is, he's the ADL chief, Anti-Defamation League chief. Anti-Defamation League that goes after anybody who speaks ill about the British Protectorate and the crimes it commits. But anyway, Jonathan Greenblatt is the ADL chief. He said that they should consider using explosive pagers and cell phones against people in the United States that's against the British Protectorate, genocide, and other war crimes. He said this. He's from here in the United States. He openly said this, that they should consider the pagers and explosive cell phones, like they used against some of the Hezbollah people, on people here in the United States who won't go along with the genocide and the war crimes, because we're anti-Semitic, okay? And other tactics like were used in Lebanon and Syria. Now, first things first, these are Talmudic Sabbatean Frankists that are Zionist politically and ideologically. They're not Judeans, number one. Second thing, these are white lineage Zionists, which means they are not Semitic. And thirdly, there was never a nation of Israel on any map in the Middle East. It was Phoenicia and then it was Palestine. There has never been a nation of Israel. What was Israel were the children of Jacob, right? That thing in the Middle East is a British protectorate in Palestine, wholly funded and created by the Rothschilds in the Balfour Declaration. It has nothing to do with the Bible. All right. There's a rumor going around that Iran has conventional navy off Sri Lanka and that they attacked a tanker. No, the tanker caught fire. So if you catch that story, they're saying that the Iranian military is operating 3,500 miles away from Iran. That is completely untrue. That is a generated story, and it is a load of crap. The ship caught fire. It was not attacked by anybody. Although there are British Protectorate agencies and agents online saying that it was an attack by Iran. All right. Let's put it to you this way. If you had a conventional navy and you had it hidden out in the Indian Ocean somewhere, which is like 28 million square miles, I think that number's pretty close. Why would you give it away until you needed it to attack a transport ship with oil on it? Wouldn't you save it back for if you needed it to go after American Navy? Just logic, you all. If they're operating in 28 million square miles, unhindered and undetected, why would you give yourself away for a tanker? You wouldn't. All right, now, the Russian hacking bullshit is coming out again, all along with the Iranian hacking bullshit again. All right. I looked up the statistics. Predominance of hacks since 2012. All right. Including denial of service attacks. Number 1, British Protectorate in Palestine. Number 2, the UAE and Qatar. Number 3, Ukraine, including the hack of the voting machines in 2020. I don't care about Trump. I'm just stating a fact. They were tracked through the Vatican satellite to the Ukraine in the same building that Soros Foundation was in the Ukraine. All right. Number 4, East India, which also happens to have the highest rate of phone scams, where they call you and say that they're from somewhere and you need to do this or that or the other, and they steal a lot of money from people. And then number 5 is the Chinese, especially inside of corporate systems, which would be intellectual theft. All right. But now here's a caveat on that. A lot of the companies that the Chinese have been able to corporately hack have hired Chinese nationals. Why would you hire Chinese nationals and then be surprised that you got hacked? Just saying. All right. I will get back to this part shortly. Next page. At 7:44 p.m. last night, Donald Trump said if Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact time, excuse my language, the F-tards in Washington, D.C. will order strikes and obliterate, that's his word, floating teeth today, obliterate various power plants, starting with the biggest first inside of Iran. All right, y'all know what the definition of terrorism is? Terrorism is the threat or the use of violence for political ends by definition. So you tell me who the effing terrorists are. Iran responded immediately. If one gets hit, then all the energy, the information technology, the data centers, and desalination for the United States, its allies, and the British Protectorate in Palestine are gone. And they put a map up showing where all of them were at. All right. I talked about the escalation domination the other night, and I hope you all heard it. If you didn't, it's a couple podcasts back. It's called escalation control. It's fully in the hands of Iran, regardless of what the BPIP and the United States want to talk about. All right. There are not any that's the other story I wanted to break on you. Somebody is putting out a load of crap that a ship was hit in the Red Sea that had 30,000 interceptors on it, and it sunk in 2,400 feet of water. Okay. That's how specific this lie is. And that's one thing about the lies. If they make them very specific and very detailed, people believe it. The United States has never manufactured 30,000 interceptor missiles. That's Pat 1, Pat 2, Pat 3, or THAADs, all put together, okay? If you take the total number, we've barely even scratched the surface of about 6,000, maybe 10, maybe. All right? And that's really stretching it. So if you see that story about a ship being sunk and it had 30,000 interceptor missiles on it, it is a complete load of bunk, more propaganda, okay? But currently, there are not interceptors available, and they're not effective. They've been hitting less than 3 to 5% when they were available. All right. The other thing is Iran at this point has shown that it has accuracy within maybe 25, 30 meters. Okay, that's huge. I would say it's probably closer to 10 to 20 meters. So between 30 and 60 feet, they can drop it. Also, Iran's capabilities are far in excess of anything that Western propaganda would have you believe, would have said before this thing started, and it continues to say. While myself and dozens of others, when this thing started, point blank said continuously from the beginning that Iran was far ahead in planning, skills, and development, capabilities, and durability than what Americans and Western people have been told. The propaganda was thick, but it was all bullshit. All right. And all of us that were talking, Larry Johnson, Colonel Wilkerson, Colonel McGregor, Daniel Davis, even Stas, Krapivnik, all of us who were online, the ambassadors, Freeman, Ambassador Alistair Crook, all of us who know, we caution strongly. And there's a lot more famous people, dignitaries and delegates that have been out here, okay? And as we were trying to do this, we find ourselves blacklisted, shadow banned, blocked, delisted, just like prior to the Iraq illegal attack by Bush, and just like it was prior to the lockdowns and Injectomania starting. They are trying to keep us quiet. And when we do manage to get online, they'll put the bots and the paid shills on to trash the chat. You have to wonder, when voices are silenced in this myriad of ways that they're doing it, it should be prevalent upon people who listen to me to ask, why is there a need to keep us quiet? Why is there a need to not let us speak or be heard? In the British Protectorate of Palestine, they currently hold 10,000 prisoners, hostages, whatever you want to call them. They can't technically be prisoners because they've never been charged with anything. They never committed a crime other than trying to get through a gate from one place to another to go to work, or they were picked up from their homes, or they were picked up from the streets. 10,000 prisoners. Yeah. Lebanese and Palestinian. They have been raped, they have been tortured, and worse, if you can imagine. And they continue to be. There are women who have been gang raped while being filmed. They rape men, women, and children. They sodomize them with nasty things. If they die, the IDF says it's okay, they're animals, so it's not a crime. They've had a trial that said that. I want to point this out. This is your moral, ethical British Protectorate in Palestine. The British Protectorate in Palestine has now put a bounty of $10 million on Professor Syed Marandi. I say that now so that you know who to listen to. His name is Professor Syed. It's Seyed Marandi, Marandi. He is a professor at a university in Iran, and he is a public spokesman. He's all over the place. They put a bounty on his head for assassination because he refuses to stop being a guest on shows, and he refuses to not speak for Iran, for the Palestinians, and against the atrocities of the British Protectorate in the United States. That's how serious they are about shutting people up. $10 million if somebody kills him. Of course, they won't pay it. Y'all know that. But next, the United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine announced intentions to escalate the conflict. And then they announced that they're thinking about withdrawing. And then they announced this. Look, they're talking about escalating the conflict and the attacks on Iran. They've already done 7,000 strikes based on their numbers in Iran already. The majority of strikes were civilian targets like schools, police stations, emergency medical services, hospitals, civilian industries, everything that they've attacked to the tune of about 96, 97%. Notice I corrected myself. It's not everything. To the tune of about 96 or 97% of the targets have been war crimes. All right. Robert Mueller died. I don't know if you remember him, but the POS, I don't really, I know for a fact that there's not really a hell, but I wish there was just for him. You know, like the Chinese 100 layers of hell. That's where that man needs to go. But I thought I'd give you the good news that he died. Okay, the Dimona nuclear facility was not hit directly. It was the housing of the scientists and the security. The original statement was 100 plus dead, and it's unclear how many were injured. I want to point out that they did not actually hit, I think I said it earlier, but they did not actually hit the nuclear facility at Dimona, or at Arad for that matter. What they did is they hit the scientists, the technicians, and the security, the housing. It was in response for the attack on the Natanz that was done twice, by the way, not just once. It was targeted twice. Natanz is the nuclear reactor that generates power in Iran that the BPIP tried to hit twice and missed, or intentionally targeted so it would hit close. And I tell you honestly, the big tower and all that getting hit wouldn't be the issue. It's the cooling pools that you have to worry about. If y'all remember Fukushima, it was the cooling pools that exploded first. Now, here's the thing. Iran has been stating ahead of time what its targets were. I just told you the drumster in Washington, D.C. threatened them, and they gave you a map telling you what was going to be hit. All right. They list everything that they target, and they tell you. And afterwards, they take claim that I did this, we did this, we did this, we did this, right? So there are continued attacks that are happening that Iran has specifically addressed as being not their doing. Now, if you're going to claim hundreds of missile strikes, why would you go out of your way to say we didn't do this one and we didn't do that one? All right. I will tell you, it is the British protectorate in Palestine and the United States use of false flags in an attempt to draw in other countries. That's exactly what it is. Update on the U.S. civilians in the battle zones. Things changed since I made this note. So if I get to it again and repeat it, forgive me. There were literally hundreds of thousands of civilians still in the battle zones, specifically Iraq. They had made a truce. NATO had brokered a truce with the Shia in Iraq for 24 hours in order to evacuate NATO troops, NATO personnel, NATO civilians, and contractors. All right. Somebody attacked one of the Shia resistance groups with rockets. Whether it was the United States or the British protectorate in Palestine, I could not tell you. But since the United States was part of the arrangements because they were going to try to get the Victoria base in Baghdad and the Green Zone evacuated, that was negotiated. Why would they attack and break the truce? The British protectorate in Palestine would. They've done it how many times? I'm just saying, why would the United States attack the group that had given them 24 hours to evacuate? It makes no sense to me, does it to you? But there's good evidence that it was actually launched from the British protectorate in Palestine aircraft, trying to break the truce so that we couldn't evacuate our personnel. You think about it, hundreds of thousands of civilians, plus our military, plus our dignitaries, are being bombed and killed. And if they get taken prisoner or killed, what would that do in the United States as far as outrage? They intentionally tried to break the truce. Now, I don't know if it's still holding or not. I couldn't get that information. The Ukraine, I told you I'd tell you when I had something. The Ukraine has launched a slurry of 300 drones into Russia. It's the third one that they've done. They targeted civilians in Moscow and other cities, not military bases. They targeted civilians. And about 97% of the drones are being shot down. And they have other anti-drone technology that they're using. But I just wanted to point out that that's not like 900 drones that Ukraine has launched at civilians in Russia. Side note, current fireballs that everybody are seeing, the current fireballs that are being seen all over the place are very likely from 3I Atlas dust and debris. We are literally passing through the region that 3I Atlas passed through, and of course it has a tail and it expands, right? You have to hope that the sun pushes most of the dust and debris out, but that's not how it works. We pass through debris every year that the sun hasn't passed from other comets. So these fireballs that we're seeing is very likely, I would say 99% likely, dust and debris from comet 3I Atlas, because we are literally at our closest distance to where it passed. All right. So don't let people scare you about that. There's all this crap online about how we're being pummeled and we're going to get hit. We are being hit every day, but they're not explaining to you all that it is the debris field from 3I Atlas where it passed. All right. So I like to dispel lies while I'm giving you truth. Okay. The missing Major General that I brought up yesterday. All right. He was based at Kirtland when the ordinance was signed off, and he is the individual who signed the ordinance, the nuclear ordinance, off of the base. All right. We know, because it was tracked at the time, we know that it was delivered into the hands of the CIA. Why? Because it traveled from Kirtland Air Force Base and was tracked overhead to the CIA base here in the United States, in North Carolina, as a matter of fact. Why they have to be here? Anyway, so I've said before, you can't separate NATO, Gladio, CIA, and Mossad. They're all one organization and have been since the establishment of British Protectorate and Mossad. This general vanished the day before the attack started. He disappeared on the 27th. The attack started on the 28th. The signatures of the radioactive material, the elements that are left over after the explosion, can be traced to where it was made. All right. So if one is detonated, you can trace it and track it, and you'll know that it was a United States ordinance that was detonated. All right. You got two things, actually three. You got false flags that are possible. They could put one in Europe and say that Iran did it. They could put one here in the United States and say Iran did it. Or they could do the third thing that I mentioned. They could take our ordinance, put it on one of the British Protectorate missiles, launch it into Iran, and when the trace elements came back, it would be blamed on the United States. All right. Here's the thing that I missed when I was telling you this the other day, or last night. There's another thing that could be done with it. It could be given to the Ukraine and put on either form of the missiles that are coming from England and France, which means that because those missiles are nuclear capable, and because of the ordnance type that was taken off the base, those could be attached to those rockets in Ukraine and launched into Russia. I want you all to be aware of that. Okay. I just want to keep reminding you all that ordinance was signed off the base, was put in the hands of the CIA, and is actually not accounted for. So if there is a dirty nuke, or if there's a nuclear attack, we have to always consider the false flag option. All right. Next page. I'm going as fast as I can, y'all. I have continued to point out that the actions, specifically the targeting used by the United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine, have been war crimes from the first Tomahawk missiles that were launched. Myself and others have stated this continuously, and we don't mean to be repetitive, but we want to be reminding people. From the very first actions taken, it was a war crime. It was a violation of the Nuremberg findings. It's a violation of the United Nations Charter. And it's also a violation of Geneva Conventions. All right. The 170 dead children was intentionally done because it was clearly marked on Google Earth. You could see that was a school. There is no reason for them not to have known. The double tap was intended to kill the IRGC officers trying to rescue the children after the first explosion. Another war crime. All right. The targeting has been 23, this is just what I've got, 23 schools, 18 hospitals, any firehouse that's on the map. I mean, literally, there's like 43 firehouses that have been hit, ambulance centers, the Red Crescent headquarters, and the Red Crescent secondary station, the National Emergency Headquarters, for like floods, earthquakes, things like that, the police stations, known food distribution centers, known civilian industries and grocery warehouses, random neighborhoods, and historical, not just historical sites for Iran, but UNESCO World Heritage Sites. These are some these are some of the oldest buildings. These are all war crimes, y'all. Just flat out, they're all war crimes. Now, while the Western media is silent about all those things, we also have 1 million who are being subjected to forced dislocation in southern Lebanon, with an estimated 1/3 of them being a Christian population. They are bombing their homes. They are using helicopter gunship attacks on the communities. They are carpet bombing. Okay. All the while, the Gaza attacks continue in furtherance of the genocide that they started. But more intensely since 22, 24, 25. And there's already 500,000 to 700,000 dead in Gaza that were just Some of them bodies were recovered, but the majority of them were just bulldozed under with the wreckage. Interesting. Iran stated that the Diego Garcia missiles were not their doing. Specifically, went out of their way to state it. I'll say again, they have given a complete list of every target that they've chosen. Okay, and they do it in advance and after the fact. Yet, again, on this one, just like the attack in Oman and the attack in Turkey, they said, it's not us. But in a backward piece of sarcasm, one of their ministers said that it was not outside their reach if they really wanted to. All right. These claim targets versus openly saying, not ours, we didn't do it. We've had one in Cyprus, although they did hit Cyprus the second time. We've had several in Turkey. We've had Azerbaijan. We've had one in Qatar that was not theirs. We've had the Americo oil reserve storage. We've also had Oman. Right? This is typical false flag. Do not forget the USS Liberty. All right. This is what they've done. This is what the British Protectorate in Palestine has done since 1948. Just pointing it out. All right. Escalation dominance is something I brought up earlier. I'm going to reiterate a couple of points. First things first. Escalation dominance control still remains Iranian at this point. Why? Because they have considerably more targets available to them than we have of them. That's the reason why they're targeting schools and all this other stuff, because they really don't have targets to hit. Same thing happened in Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia and Serbia. They couldn't hit the military, so they started destroying infrastructure in schools and hospitals, which is, typical British Protectorate in Palestine tactic anyway. What was the first thing they hit in Gaza? Hospitals and schools. First thing the British Protectorate in Palestine hit when they decided they were going to carpet bomb and destroy all of Gaza and commit genocide. First thing they hit were schools, universities, hospitals, fire departments, and ambulances. And they did their famous double tap. When the ambulance and fire showed up, they hit them again. Anyway, here's the other thing. There's considerably more damage done with the targets that Iran has available. And in most of these British protectorates that have appointed monarchs, it's very easy to see regime change in those countries like Iraq has done than you're ever going to see happen in Iran. The United Nations and the European Union have issued statements that condemn Iran without any comment on the illegal, unprovoked attack and the war crimes being committed on Iran twice now. That should tell you something. Do not forget the lunatic fringe, the religious zealotry that's involved in this. Both the Sabbatine Frankist mentality, which are your Zionists, and the heretical, that's what they are according to all regular Christians, the heretical evangelical Zionists, created by manipulation from the first, which were the Sabbatine Frankists, are nihilist in nature. They believe that destruction, death, and this kind of evil is a way for their God to return. I hate to break it to the Christians, but the Sabbatine Frankists and the evangelicals' gods are not the same being. Although that's been carefully obscured since 1980. I put the live that I did last night, I did get the link to Occupation of the American Mind posted. It's the first comment, or should be the first comment on yesterday's live. If you want to go see it, it's on Rumble. You don't have to worry about, your computer getting hit or anything like that. But it explains how the British Protectorate in Palestine took over evangelical Christianity in the United States in 1980. Fanaticism will turn the nihilists, because they think if they die, it's great, right? It'll turn the nihilists into annihilists. All right. They think that it's okay to go kill everybody else that disagrees with them. Do you not see this? Self-destruction becomes genocide and murder very quickly with this kind of a thing. Back to escalation. Any escalation attempt against Iran has resulted in immediate retaliation plus a multiplier added to it. You know, like when you're playing a video game, you get a multiplier. That's what's happening every time the United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine makes an escalatory move against Iran. They get the retaliation immediately, plus the multiplier added to it. Back to what I was saying about the Victoria base in Baghdad, evacuation was set up under truce, but the Shia resistance was attacked by rockets. I cannot again say that why would the United States and NATO attack the Shia resistance who had granted a truce for evacuation? And it's reasonable to understand, because of the location and the anger that's been expressed, that it was the British Protectorate in Palestine trying to break the truce in order to prevent us from evacuating. Just wanted to bring that back up. Something interesting too. I talked about the Iran-Iraq war that was financed and put on by us against them. This has actually created an Iraq-Iran mutually beneficial situation, an alliance that was so unlikely that I would have never seen it. You got to remember, we're talking about Shia resistance in Iraq, and we're talking about Iran, which is a Shia republic. The EU said that they were, and NATO said that they were withdrawing, but they're actually being expelled. They're lucky that they're being allowed evacuation. The Shia resistance has taken over Iraq. Iran is a Shia republic, as I stated. Don't forget that other nations are predominantly Shia, and even the Sunni are infuriated with the lack of defense of their countries and the lack of standing against the genocide in Palestine and the continued attacks and crimes against Iran. So the Sunni in many places are standing up with the Shia, which is unheard of until now. Also, the anger at the monarch class in these Gulf Coast countries, right, is exponentially increasing day by day as they help or assist the United States and the British Protectorate of Palestine to continue killing people in Lebanon, bombing Iran, and genocide in Palestine. I said it again. I say it more often than not. The British appointed rulers, the protectorate regimes that were set up after colonialism, are likely, and every day even more likely, to be overthrown and replaced by Shia with an Iranian-style republic where you have an elected parliament, plus you have a mullah as a moral leader. So you have a dual president and mullah, a council. Some will be more moderate, like Iran has always been, and some will be hardliners, which means we won't be able to deal with them. And it's nobody's fault but the government in Washington, D.C. and the British Protectorate. But I could see an Iranian model where you have the Shah, or not the Shah, but the mullahs, the Ayatollah, and then you have a council and a parliament that work together. It's actually a good system. It's worked very well, and it's become more moderated as it's existed. Next, Giuliani in Syria is in deep shite. I told you he would be. He moved on Lebanon with a small group. So now he has the Kurds who aren't loyal. He has the Shia resistance in Iraq. He's got Azerbaijan angry. He's only got 30,000 total troops anyway, unless Turkey sends in more Gladio wolves somehow. The brutality inside of Syria is being resisted by the Shia, the Sunnis, the Christians, right? As separate forces, but all are united now against the CIA Mossad occupation by Giuliani. So Syria is breaking open again. And I don't see the Giuliani and his 30,000 are going to last very long. They're also being hit out of Lebanon because of their incursion into Lebanon, trying to assist the British Protectorate. Turkey with Erdogan, I'll say it again, I've said it many times. He and his leadership are never to be trusted by any side. They will play all sides against the middle to their own benefit. So anything that Erdogan says, just take it as a temporary measure, because he will trade sides that quick. Although I have pointed out many times that the Gladio wolves that turned up in Ukraine and in those Eastern Bloc countries, even back into Serbia and Yugoslavia, raising hell, those Gladio wolves were trained and armed and then sent out from Turkey. That's the reason why the Greeks have issues. Anyway, the ground war attempted in Iran. Everybody keeps talking about a ground invasion or whatever, okay? Look, the ground war, if it's an attempted Iran, is Korea meets Vietnam. The casualty, I'm not the only one saying this, the casualties would make the combination of casualties between Korea and Vietnam look like pleasantry, all right? They have 1 million trained troops, plus reserves. There's no clear number on the total available. They have a population of 93 million, all right? There's no clear numbers, period, regardless of what intelligence is trying to tell you. We know 1 million is the base number. Here's the other thing. Right now, there are men of various ages standing in line around the blocks to join the military and go on active duty. There's also been a massive surge in civil service volunteers. They're not close to quitting. They're just angry. Think about the United States after Pearl Harbor. Think about the United States after the false flag of the Gulf of Tonkin. Al-Aqsa Mosque is Muslim. The Holy Sepulchre Church is Christian. It has been closed by the British Protectorate in Palestine for the whole part of Ramadan, and it will remain closed all the way through the Holy Week. First time. They are punishing Muslim and Christian alike. I told you about the F-35 stealth that got targeted and hit. Two of them actually now. The F-15, the F-16, the flying gas stations. There is no safe flight if you're in Iranian-controlled airspace or over their waters. Just a fact. And the Shia resistance in Iraq has surface to air. So with them in control, Iraqi airspace is no longer safe to fly over. Iran they have actually openly stated it. They have 300 armored speedboats. They kind of look like that Florida Thunder boat that Hulk Hogan had in that show. It's an armored boat with armored driver, and it's got guns on the front. It's got rockets. Those armored speedboats carry surface to air, mines, and torpedoes. Plus, they also carry flares to help. They carry countermeasures. All right. They have multiple packages, and they're designed for multiple uses. All right. They also have smaller, lighter craft that are kind of like the air boats that are also multitask. That's their Navy for the Persian Gulf or for the Hormuz. Okay. Iran has listed, I told you they issued a full list of the targets that will be hit if the United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine attack their power infrastructure. They said that they will eliminate power for the British Protectorate in Palestine and all Gulf Coast countries that have assisted in the attacks, all data and IT centers, all desalination benefiting the United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine and their allies, plus anything that could be considered a United States or British Protectorate in Palestine company. All right. Over here, they're talking about, over here you get all this bluff and bluster and all the bullshit, right? Over there, they've demonstrated their ability, right? And you keep hearing people in Washington, D.C. talking about unconditional surrender. It's not going to happen. It's just not. They already know that the British Protectorate in Palestine wants to blow them to hell. Donald Trump said it out loud. It's not about any of the terms or conditions that they previously stated. If it was about nuclear weapons, that was already dealt with. The JPCOA had it dealt with. And they had not violated it, by the way, even though the Western media keeps saying they did. And they were already, the negotiations, all they had to do was go back and work out the small details, and the negotiations were done right the day before the attack started. All right. Massive destruction and the destruction of Iran as a nation has been stated clearly to be the goal. So in Iran, they understand this is existential, and it's their personal survival, or they're going to end up occupied and destroyed like Gaza and Lebanon's being done right now, and parts of Syria. Would you quit? They would die first. All right. Sunni versus Shia. A lot of people get this confused. First things first, the Sunni were manipulated. All right. They were manipulated, funded, and armed by the United States. That's where we got ISIS, ISIL, and Al Qaeda, Taliban during the Russian War. All right. And they've all been controlled by the CIA and the Mossad. That's a fact. It's not an accident that Israeli Secret Intelligence Service, ISIS. All right. And it's manufactured extremism. They had assets in there that created, just like the FBI does in the United States. They give the guy, they find somebody, they set him up, they pump him up, they maybe drug him a little bit, and then they get him all fired up, and they give him the stuff, and then they arrest him. That's what ISIS, ISIL, Al Qaeda, and Taliban have been. Except for the Taliban was actually resisting the Russians. That was a proxy war for us. But it's CIA, Mossad backed. All right. It's manufactured extremism, and it's always been Sunni, not Shia. Okay. They always talk about the bombing in Beirut. Iran was behind the bombing in Beirut. Fact, it was a mall. Okay. A mall was created in 1972. That's 7 years before the Ayatollah took over. The Ayatollah and the Republic Guard took over Iran. Okay. So it had nothing to do with Iran. The other thing I want to point out too is that not all Sunnis are extremists. There's moderate Sunnis too. They have a very specific way of doing things, but they're not terrorists. They couldn't care less. Just leave them alone. You know, it's that thing about men who want to be left alone. But through money, tribal disputes, and manipulation, they were able to drag them into ISIS, ISIL, Al Qaeda under false circumstances. Those were just armies that were designed to create havoc all over the Middle East. On Orban of Hungary, I told you yesterday that he had been threatened by the Ukraine, specifically Zelensky and his goons. He had been threatened, and his family, to be killed if he did not vote for the $90 billion to Ukraine. Well, he did not vote. He voted against it. Now the CIA, through the Washington Post here in the United States, is trying to put it off on Russia. If anything happens to Orban, or there's an attempted assassination, it's Russia doing it to make sure he gets reelected. So that's how quick they're trying to cover their butts. Ukraine says it yesterday. Washington Post is trying to blame it on Russia today. There's more chatter, which is just bullshit, in the media about Iranian terrorist cells in the United States, attacks in the United States. First of all, when you listen to it, it's all hyperbole. But if you've never listened to my podcast, it's Raven Keefer, The Fallacies. I've listened to this stuff today. I wanted to hurl and throw up. They start with appeals to authority. This person's an authority. Then they go to appeal to emotion. Oh my God, wouldn't it be terrible, horrible, awful, right? Then they go to slippery slope. Well, if they did it here, they did it there. And the problem is it's false comparison because Iran never did it there. And then appeal to ignorance because they know a lot of people are completely unfamiliar with the history of Iraq and Iran and the Shia versus Sunni. They know that a lot of people have no idea that the United States, the CIA, and Mossad created ISIL, ISIS, and Al Qaeda. But here's the thing: if they have to use fallacies of argument as the only arguments that they have, then they are effing liars. Because fallacies of argument are just that, fallacies. There's no validation. There's no backing to it. It's the reason why it's called a fallacy. If they have to use the fallacies of argument, then first they are effing liars. And the second thing, they're attempting to create belief systems in the people who are watching them. And it's a setup for a false flag, just like they did with Iraq. The United States and the British Protectorate in Palestine and the EU are in a zero negotiations situation. They have openly ignored agreements that they've made. They violated treaties. They've admitted to treachery while negotiating. And then they committed treachery while negotiating. They assassinated negotiators. They attempted to assassinate the negotiator from Russia. They've assassinated diplomats, dignitaries, including the former president of Iran that they killed in his helicopter. They have the United States, the British Protectorate in Palestine, and the European Union have shown disregard for the United Nations Charter, disregard for the Geneva Conventions, disregard for the Nuremberg rulings, disregard for the International Criminal Court, disregard for the War Crimes Council, disregard for all foreign leadership, and complete disregard for human rights and life in general. Why would anybody negotiate with any of them? A note from Ray McGovern. I love the old man. The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Diplomacy and military intelligence must be used to stave off the possibility of war. Notice what I said. Diplomacy and military intelligence must be used to stave off the possibility of war. If it must be prepared it must be prepared with extreme delicacy if war is obligatory. And victorious troops must return home to prevent unnecessary cost on the victors and the troops. That's Sun Tzu, 500 BC. He knew something, didn't he? All right, back to this last part, and I'm done. And I'm still going to get it done in under an hour, y'all. Let me get a drink real quick. All right. The Zionists as a group were created in the 1800s. A lot of people don't know this. They started out as the NZC, the National Zionist Congress here in the United States, and then they created the AIPAC, American Israeli Political Action Committee. All right. But the Zionists have been behind the worst crimes and crimes against humanity since before World War II. The Zionists were the Bolsheviks that went into Ukraine and purged real Judean Torah followers and Russians, then went into Russia as Stalin and Lenin. Got to remember, Stalin and Lenin were both educated in New York City or London, England, and they were financed by Zionists out of New York and London, England, before they went into Russia. Their names aren't even Stalin and Lenin. Don't take my word for it. Look it up. What were their real names? That's another thing they all have in common. They steal names. Like Milikowski stole the name Netanyahu. The purge of millions in Russia as Bolsheviks. They killed Christians, Muslims, and Torah-following Jews. Then, at the end of World War II, you had the fire bombings in Germany, the 20 cities in France, and Tokyo. That was ordered by the Zionists in charge in London and New York, who were already pretty much in control of Washington, D.C. by then. They ordered the atomic bombs on Fukushima and Nagasaki as punishment for having their trades thrown out of those two cities prior to the war, actually prior to World War I. All right. Then we have all the post-war atrocities on the Japanese and the German soldiers. Hundreds of thousands of German soldiers were left out into the field in rain with very little food, no clean water, no sanitation, to just die by order of the Zionists in New York, Washington, D.C., and London. If you haven't seen it, it's called Hellstorm, the documentary. They have committed genocide in Gaza, apartheid state since 1960s. They've had the Nakba in 1948, and they are currently committing another Nakba in southern Lebanon to 1 million people. They killed 500,000 to 700,000 that we know of in Gaza. They have killed 200 plus journalists since their attack on Gaza began. That is more journalists than were killed in World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and all the other conflicts that the United States has been part of. They have killed more in 2 years. They have been committing assassinations since 1948 of their own people and others. Right now, they're in a process, like I said, of 1 million southern Lebanese, including Christians, are being forced in dislocation while being carpet bombed and shot at with gunships. They have committed economic crimes against multiple nations as retaliation for lack of support for their illegal acquisition of nuclear weapons, their genocide, and other crimes. They have illegally acquired nuclear weapons and have refused to participate in any regulatory system, including treaties. They have refused inspection by the IAEA. Please note, I said Zionists, not Torah-following Jews. That is what I have for you tonight, and I did it in 57 minutes. It's a lot of information. You might want to go back and listen to it again. I will say this. If the lunatics in Washington, D.C., they don't represent me, if the lunatics in Washington, D.C. and the British Protectorate in Palestine insist on hitting the power grid, I mean, they've already committed war crimes for 1 day straight in Iran anyway. But if they insist on hitting the power grid in Iran put up a map, you can find it if you look for it, showing all the targets that they would hit. And people need to understand that U.S. interests, those companies that run the oil out of Iraq and Kuwait and other places are not Arab companies. Those are British and American companies. And I say American in a loose sense of the term because all the companies that Cheney the Chump and Dummy the Rummy and Condeceitful Rice installed in Iraq and Kuwait after the invasion, which was illegal too, those weren't American companies. Those were British holdings with a few American owners. And a lot of the owners were Zionists out of the British Protectorate, the high dollar people. Anyway, I have come to you on the level. I've been plumb with my words, and I've shot it to you as straight as I could. And I leave you in the square. You are what you are and who you are, and I am what I am and who I am. And folks, that's always enough. If it's not enough, then there's something wrong with us, right? Mahayana, favor, nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing absent from your lives that are needed. And again, I will do an update at 10:30 in the morning tomorrow. That's Monday, 10:30 in the morning Eastern Standard Time, United States. If there's enough to give you at 10:30 in the morning. If not, then it will be 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, U.S. I appreciate every last one of you who took the time. And I don't have time for hyperbole, and I don't have time for people putting out crap that's not true. Like the fireball story. Oh, we're going to be hit. No, folks, it's going through, say it again, we're going through the tail of 3i Atlas. We're at the closest to its passing in our orbit right now. That's the reason why we're seeing fireballs of larger numbers outside of normal time. And the story about a Iranian ship torpedoing a oil tanker. Bullcrap. And the story about 30,000 interceptor missiles going down with a ship in the Red Sea. Bullshit. Okay. I hate like hell that they're creating this stuff and trying to draw people in. I mean, that story about the 30,000 interceptor missiles that the United States has never even produced, it's got like 25,000 views. And people aren't, there's that appeal to ignorance. People don't know what it is. Find out if you haven't done it, it's Raven Keefer Podcast, The Fallacies. Because if you can identify the fallacies of argument, and like a news channel immediately appeals to authority, well, here's Captain so-and-so of whatever. Who gives a shit? He could be Captain America, and if he doesn't know anything about nuclear ordinance, what the hell is he doing on TV talking about it? He could be retired Major General John Shit. But if he doesn't know anything about Iran and Iranian tactics, he's got no business on TV talking about it, right? Fallacies of argument, y'all. Don't even look at my podcast. Just look them up yourself. Favor, everybody.